Hello everyone, Zeus here. This is a new video. Haven't uploaded one in a while because I haven't been working on any level design stuff directly myself. I've been kind of neck deep in the world of textures and models for helping other people out. So yeah, so this is my map Siege Grove, and Siege is not a game mode that exists in TF2. In fact, it is a game mode that I've always wondered what would happen if you took a game mode from another similar game, so in this case Paladins, and brought it into Team Fortress 2, and how would it play? What dynamics would it have, and what are the key differences between these two games? And so that's exactly what I did. So this game mode Siege, basically what you do is you capture a control point, and then you get a payload cart that you have to push to the end of the map. So here's the control point. So this should be a kind of a hybrid between King of the Hill and payload mode. So it should be pretty fast and deathmatchy, but still, like, you know, I think the thing that I believe that this has the potential to be is a really dynamic gameplay, because you do switch roles pretty quickly after the control point is capped. So you get the point, and then suddenly now there's a team that has to be in a defensive role and a team that's now purely offensive. So I think it could make for some really dynamic gameplay. So if you've ever played Paladins, this map might look quite familiar to you. In fact, this is based on a Paladins map named Warder's Gate. And when I say based on, I mean almost directly copied. Obviously, there's some differences to make it work in TF2. Most notably being health and ammo packs, because those don't exist in Paladins. And some minor layout tweaks, because in Paladins, sniper is not as much of a factor as it is in Team Fortress. So I think that's the big place where the maps from Paladins and the maps from TF2 will diverge. So I imagine over time this layout will become more and more, or let's say less Paladins-like and more, you know, obviously TF2-like. So, you know, this map is, you know, a close approximation of what the Paladins map looks like, with some, you know, notable differences. So you will also notice that this is Siege Grove A2. I didn't make a video for A1 because it was a complete experiment. No idea how this was going to play. No idea if it was going to be fun or just a horrible experience. Turns out it was pretty fun. I actually did some play tests with some of my competitive friends, and it went very well. The first version of it obviously had problems, some bugs, but played surprisingly well, and everyone said they had a lot of fun with it. So I continued working on it, fixed some of those issues, and yeah, so we did another play test today. Also went very well, and I would say it played quite a bit better than the first version, which you know, as a person who spends many hours, you know, toiling over layout, you know, that's good. It's a good thing to feel. So one of the key differences between my first version and this version is I made this last point a lot easier to defend. The first one was too, let's say, it was too hard to actually, like, you know, set up any kind of reasonable defense here. There was no way to, like, hold the choke or hold a flank route, because the sight lines were so long, and it was really easy to get into this area. So in the Paladins map, this room actually would normally have a death pit. So this middle part here would actually just be an endless void. So my first version, I put a tree in here. However, everyone hated that tree. So what I did is I actually replaced that with a pillar, and then I said, well, wait a second. Like, it's a little bit obnoxious that you can just, you know, throw pills through here, and you could just, you know, you could spam down a sentry gun pretty easily if they had one over here. So I just slid this pillar over here, and this actually creates a pretty nice defensible dynamic here. However, a soldier or a scout can jump up here and, you know, still try to fight this. So I think this room actually came out pretty well, and it actually played very much how I wanted it to. So I'm very happy about that. So I didn't have any complaints about this room in particular. Also, this room is particularly nice because this room plays well. It also leads people to be able to stage a push out in this grassy area. So this grassy area does overlook the point a little bit. However, it's not directly on the point, and it's certainly out of the main sniper sight line. So this grassy area is a good place to be staging your pushes. As well, this room also, this room is really a deathmatch room, but that's, I think, okay. It's a place you can hide as medic if your team is capping the point. But you are at the risk of being flanked. So, you know, that's something, as usual, there's always a trade-off in every map for the positions you're in. There's always a risk of being flanked, right? So yeah, so the big difference in my map versus the Paladins map is the health packs. So health and ammos are always hard to get right, and you know, everyone wants more, and at some point you have to ask, well, if I have that many health packs, then what's the point of having a medic? So, you know, it's definitely something I'm keeping in mind. I'm trying to think about, you know, is the problems the health packs, or is it that, you know, the layout is such that people die too quickly and they feel that they need health packs because there's a high damage output? So maybe it's too easy to fight in some areas. So one area in particular is this, which is fairly dead space. I mean, there's really not a lot of good fight that happens here because this area is just so big and open. So that's something I'm looking to address. And also, partly, this is a pretty long sight line that I think I want to occlude. So yeah, I definitely think there'll be some changes made around this area here. So obviously, you know, in the Paladins map, this is not a big deal because they have a little bit less, I guess, of this extra space here. But really, the Paladins map plays quite a bit differently than this one does because of the nature of the classes and the fact that you get the horses. So you, unlike in TF2, you get these horses. Sorry, in Paladins, you get these horses that everyone gets a consistent like rollout speed. In TF2, you know, Heavy's got to run all the way over here, so you know, that can be kind of slow. Though I would try to. I want to make the map small enough where I don't have the requirement of putting in forward spawns. So yeah, definitely still needs some work. There's definitely some areas I'm not very happy with. So I think it's good to have this route. I like the fact that you know, you can kind of just sidestep the point altogether and kind of get, you know, into their face a little bit. However, this is really, you know, maybe this little alley is fine, but the area right outside of it, I think that needs some help. So I think you'll see a lot of changes happening in this area in the next version. I've even played around with the idea of maybe having the payload cart actually go through maybe a little cave. Doesn't need to be big, but, you know, something to vary the gameplay. So maybe, or maybe something that can allow the defense to actually set up a forward defense that's not just centered around the last area. So might encourage a non-turtling strategy. And yeah, so there was a prefab on TF2 maps for Siege, which I was using for the first version, but there was a lot of weird behavior to it, a lot of, I guess, glitchy bugs. So one of the things everyone was complaining about was the payload cart, I guess, would teleport you above it, and the best I can tell, the reason for that, the reason they added that logic was because the cart seems to like get people stuck in it. So the solution, I suppose, was just teleport people above it. Obviously, TF2 players do not like it when you move them around, so you want to do that absolutely sparingly. So I completely redid all of the logic for this and tried to simplify it as best as I could. And the other big change I made, and you'll be able to hear this, I added sound cues for everything because, and I think that actually makes a really big difference. So in the first version, like there was the only sound cue you got was actually the default player destruction chiming sound, like the ding, 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 ding. So that was problematic. Oh, yeah, so this mode is implemented using the player destruction HUD because, I have to turn this into this weird hybrid mode. So the behavior that I want is both teams being able to add cap time almost like a percentage, like individual of each other. So like if I'm standing on the point, I should be getting cap time. And if red stands on the point and I'm not on the point. So kind of like a normal control point, only the cap time never goes down and we're not like tug of warring over the control point. So yeah, adding all these sound cues because the way I'm doing this logic, these control point isn't actually a real control point. So like while it looks like a control point and obviously it's going to sound like it, I don't get the normal like control point logic that you get in the normal like King of the Hill or CP game modes. So I've had to add cues for everything. So when you start capping, it plays the start capping sound, which is this. It's called the hologram start sound. Then I have one for the malfunction. I have one so when someone contests the point, it has that fizzly sound. And then when the control point is capped, there's also cues for that. And then I added, so you will be able to hear this in a second, whenever this cap goes through. I've added sounds for like vocal cues. So the announcer actually has some vocal cues to like kind of direct the players. So one thing is it's difficult because like I think in a more public setting, say on the TF2 Maps test server, people might be a bit confused because they see player destruction, like, oh, this player destruction map, not realizing what they're supposed to go do. So, I've tried to help that with some unused voice lines from the administrator. So we'll hear that when we get to 150. And the reason I chose 150 was relatively arbitrary, but I wanted there to be at least 2 to 3 team fights that can happen on this point before someone caps it. So here comes the sound now. And yeah, so she will say that and say, well, now we have this cart and that we have captured the point. We got the ding for the point that we scored. So when you cap the point, you get a score point, and then when you get the payload into the enemy's last point, if you cap that, then you get another point. However, if you fail to do so after the time limit, then the enemy team gets the score point. Now, obviously, this is not working for me because I'm in MP tournament mode. Just, believe me that it does that. So I've also added voice lines for when the point is being contested. So if the other team is on it and you are not on it, then it'll play the line to say, the point is being contested. So as if to like notify you that, oh, hey, they're on the point. You will be able to see in the HUD that that's the case, but you won't necessarily be able to see like, well, how many people are on point or like, other things that are going on with the control point. So, trying to help out the situation as best I can, but it's tough because as I've discovered, I did a lot of exploration to try to make this game mode, I guess really good and really like cohesive, but it's tough because TF2 really does not support custom HUDs, as I've discovered. There's a couple things I'm yet to try, but the first method I went down was one called EMV overlay, screen overlay. So you can you can put a picture on the screen, which is actually what it uses for stuff like when you hit yourself with the sword or the Uber or the Girardi or what. There's a lot of these status effects that will put something on your screen. And so while it's subtle, it does interfere with the screen overlay entity. So that's already a kind of an issue. So, you have to put it on a clock so it redraws like constantly, which may have, I'm not sure, I haven't tested this, but I imagine that has some performance penalty. The other issue is you can only draw one of these at once, so you can't have two, which means that I have to model every single possible game state that the HUD could be in, and then figure out a way to actually like present that game state when that state occurs. So that's a bit problematic, and I mean, while possible, it's a lot of work, very tedious, I guess. And so this seems to be at least a better way, a much simpler way to do it. However, I have been experimenting with, you can take the control points and, actually, let me go open that map right now. You can take the control points and you have this thing called cap layout, which you can actually control how the control points are like laid out on the screen. So you'll see here that what I've done is I managed to separate the control points out kind of like this. So the idea, and let me see if I remember, int fire, what was it? Is it draw stuff? Toggle. Nope, that was not it. Int fire. I do not remember the name of this entity. It was HUD something, right? Yeah. Yeah, so there I basically activated the ENV overlay. And so all my overlay does is it's just this line that kind of creates this fake, payload cart motif. So the idea is that this would actually play as a 3CP, where I add some extra flavor to it by having like a payload cart icon kind of move across the map. So the payload cart icon wouldn't actually really be like completely necessary. So this I think is a lot more intuitive, and of course you will actually be able to use this control point normally. However, I haven't been able to get this to work. The main issue I seem to have is that I can't seem to control the control points with payload carts. So it seems that you have to associate a capture area with the control point itself, which is actually the hologram. Most people don't know that. It's actually the hologram that's the control point. But I have to have a trigger area that is associated with that control point. Otherwise, it doesn't seem like I'm able to do that. So my best thought so far is I could have the payload cart's trigger area send an input to these control points trigger area to say change your number of cappers. That might work. I haven't tested that idea yet, because I've been focused on the playtest. But that is another idea I'm throwing around to try to implement this. So this would be significantly simpler. The only, I guess downside, well, there may be multiple downsides. One being, how do I revert the cap? How do I let the cap fall backwards? And that has to be synced up with the progress of the payload cart. So how do I, am I able to set the progress of a control point? It doesn't seem like I'm able to, so that's kind of a problem. But maybe I don't need to. Maybe all I need to do actually is, maybe I don't need to like move the progress of the control point itself. Maybe the payload cart gets there and then the control point just gets capped. So one pretty big problem with this though, this whole setup, is while this seems nice, the thing that I tested was trying different screen resolutions and trying different HUDs and trying different, there's even this thing called min HUD, I guess. I think that's what it's called. So I like it because it minimizes stuff, but so this is the default size of all the stuff. So on my particular HUD, which is Toon HUD, this makes these icons a little bit bigger, and it's almost impossible to synchronize this ENV overlay to just work on every HUD because, every HUD I looked at uses different icon sizes, which is already a problem because they change their offset as a result of that. So then my idea was like, okay, well, what if I just, put a payload cart, when the payload actually gets, when the point gets capped, I put a payload cart thing above this, and then it kind of like, if I can have it relatively centered and do so on the default HUD, then, custom HUD support might be a bit mixed, but if I can get something that looks okay, then maybe that's an acceptable compromise. One issue I still have to deal with, though, is the fact that I still have to model that game state like I was talking about. So I need to basically have a picture for every single like location that payload cart icon could be in on the HUD. So that's I think there's ways I can make that somewhat efficient, but still like that's going to require me to add all these trigger areas to like set the state of the payload cart, and then how do I make that seem accurate and like seem intuitive? So there's a lot of question marks about that, but this was an experiment that I did, and I'd say it's relatively successful. I mean, it's certainly interesting that you can move the control point icons around by setting the control point layout. So this is how the map stand-in actually sets like a weird diamond shape for the control points. So, I've been experimenting with this a lot. I've also been experimenting with the idea of loading in a custom resource file, which is what the HUDs use, specifically in player destruction mode. So there's a lot of elements in player destruction. So I can open this up real quick and show you. There's a lot of elements that I actually have access to in player destruction. So I may be able to manipulate these HUD elements to actually create the HUD that I want. Now, there's obviously going to be a lot of question marks here, but I may be able to use this to that effect. So, it just depends on what things I can actually manipulate. Like, for example, can I change this, this icon to something else, like to whatever I want? I think I can, because people do this for custom player destruction maps. So maybe I can use that to be a payload card icon, or so, like maybe it's the lock icon, or the so maybe there's stuff I could do there to kind of fake this. So it would be figuring out which of these things I can actually manipulate and which ones I can't. So some of them, they have a field name, and that's how the game engine actually like deposits a value in there. So in this case, it's like whatever this blue escrow thing means. I'm assuming, it's actually I don't know what that means, but I'm assuming that this is a required field that the player destruction mode believes needs to be there. So this may be one of them that I can't really do anything about. However, you can always just turn it off. So there may be some hacks I can do with this to get it to work. And the benefit of this is that I would be publishing this out on all HUDs. So it would override your defaults, so my Toon HUD or the default HUD would override it completely. And so this may be an option, but this is a lot to kind of dig through. So I haven't done this yet. I want to get my gameplay more solid before I really start investing in figuring out how to smooth out the HUD experience. But I have done quite a bit of experimentation just to get an idea of what I can do. Another idea we did have was being able to basically, what the map does is as you're capping the point, you're actually getting actually, let me switch my HUD back. As you're capping the point, the payload cart would be on an elevator which raises up over time, up to the level of the control point, and then you could kind of get some more visual progress on that, but you would get the control point HUD, or sorry, the payload HUD where you would actually be able to see the cart moving along, which would be great for the payload portion of the map where you're pushing the cart. So yeah, this has been an interesting experiment. I certainly learned quite a bit about how all the logic entities work in Team Fortress 2, and that's a whole fun rabbit hole of its own. I learned quite a bit about the engine by doing this, like overriding default resources and sounds. Apparently, there's a lot of things Source does with sound that I never even knew. So this was if nothing else, it was a good learning experience. But based on all the positive feedback, I really want to see this map succeed. So I am very motivated to try and get a good layout and game mode together, so I can prove the viability of possibly another game mode in the game, to kind of shake up the competitive experience. Competitive is very kind of set in stone, and there's been attempts to shake it up. So the introduction of Prolander, I think, is a great addition. I loved Prolander; it was very fun. This may be a great Prolander map as well, so it might add some flavor there. But I really want to see it shake up Sixes, because Sixes is very much, you play 5CP and maybe a Koth map here or there, but and it's very, there's just such a meta game to it that while that's interesting and fun, I think it would also be interesting to add more dynamic elements. So my goal is to try and make this competitively viable if I can, but I also hopefully can make it so it's fun in pubs as well. So balancing both of those things might be difficult, but we'll see. So my focus is competitive, but I do want to see how this plays in a more public setting. So look forward to the play test, I guess. Anyway, so on that note, look forward to A3, and thank you to all my play testers, and a special thank you to Mega Pie Man PhD for helping troubleshoot a lot of the issues I've had, helped me find some leaks, and even taught me some things about the engine. So a big thanks to you, man. And we will catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching, everyone.